Hello everybody, welcome back to the A-side. It's me, Riley, and we're finally here. Song Machine, Season 1, Strange Times, by Gorillaz. The long-awaited newest studio album from virtual rock band, electronica group, fronted by Damon Albarn from Blur. Released so much great and influential music throughout the 2000s, such as their self-titled album and the critically acclaimed Demon Days, and in 2010 dropped an amazing album called Plastic Beach, followed up by The Fall, which is a little disappointing in comparison to Plastic Beach, but still solid. From there on out, Gorillaz kind of disappeared for a bit. It was many years before we heard from them again, until they dropped Humans in 2017, which was a very divisive album amongst fans. And they followed that up in 2018 very quickly with the Now Now, which was almost like a reaction to Humans, it being very different. And that leads us here to Song Machine. Now, they've been slowly releasing singles off of this thing since January, and these singles have been pretty amazing. So, how does the album turn up? Well, I think it's the best thing they've done since Plastic Beach in 2010. The concept behind this album is that every single track has a different feature on it, and that helps to make every song extremely unique, as it tends to kind of lean more toward the genre and style of whoever is being featured on the tracks. But somehow, the album is still entirely cohesive, and the 11 bass songs fit together very well. And to be honest, I don't think there's a bad song on here. Everything just turns out so good. Every genre and style is done so well, and is pulled off so great. Of course, Gorillaz being such a chameleon of music, how they always hop between genres, it works really well, and Damon Albarn really fits anywhere, can kind of put himself in any style, and work with any other musician. As you can see, he doesn't necessarily take a backseat like he does on Humans. He's very much in the forefront on this album, but he works very well with other features, and kind of let the features command the sound just a little bit. Now, this album starts off very well with the track Strange Times, featuring Robert Smith of The Cure, who you all know is someone I absolutely adore. If you've been following me for a while now, you know I love The Cure. One of my favorite bands, actually top 10 favorite bands, as well as Gorillaz, both reach my top 10, and Robert Smith and Damon Albarn work together so well on this album, mostly because Damon kind of fades in the back a little bit. On his verses, Damon is very subdued and doesn't really do too much, and that's not a bad thing, because there's never any conflict of who's in command of the song here. It never feels like these two people are trying to figure out who's going to be the bigger voice, because Damon knows you really can't compete with Robert Smith. His voice is so full of character and personality. It's so unique, and he's so charismatic that he kind of naturally takes control of the song and becomes the focal point. So Damon knows that and lets himself kind of fade into the background a little bit and gives some very subdued verses, and lets Robert kind of take control of the song on this hook here. And the hook is just great, especially when it kind of blows up about halfway through the song and all the electronics kind of swell in the background, and the beat sort of drops. Not necessarily like an EDM or dubstep beat drop, but the beat does drop, and the synths come in, and it sounds great, because throughout most of the song, it's this really weird, kind of mysterious sounding electronics, and the more kind of beautiful synths don't kick in until that kind of explosion here, halfway through the song. But it's just an amazing moment, and really ties everything together. I think Strange Times, I'm going to be saying this a lot, is one of the best songs on this album. Of course, Robert Smith just sounds amazing on it, because he always does, and him and Damon work very well together. The next track on this album is Valley of the Pagans, featuring Beck, and once again, this song is amazing. Not as good as Strange Times, but still very good. I like the kind of weird electronics that go through it, very Gorillaz-esque. And Beck and Tootie kind of go back and forth this entire time from verse to verse. They sing together on this great hook. I feel so good to have a perfect soul. I feel so good to be in total control. A great kind of catchy hook, backed by these really nice kind of bright sounding synthesizers. And then of course it goes back into like the weird electronics as 2D starts rapping on the second verse, and of course Beck's first verse is a great way to start off. He comes in sounding amazing. Welcome to the land of the permanent sun, where the flowers are melted and the future is fun. He really sells his performance here, and once again, just works very well with Damon. There are some points where you can't even necessarily tell whether it's Damon or Beck. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because once again, Damon Albarn is kind of like a musical chameleon. He can fit with anyone and fit anywhere, and this kind of proves it, because Robert Smith of The Cure and Beck are two very different creators, two very different genres of music, yet they still both work very well with Damon Albarn, and that proves just how good of a musician he is. I mean, I guess technically 2D, you can call him whatever you want. I'll be referring to him as Damon, because that's who he actually is. And the best part of this song is near the end, with a refrain, in the valley where you wake up every beautiful day. A great melody line, and these synthesizers come in, and they match the melody line of the refrain here that 2D is singing, and it just sounds like a very classic Gorillaz moment. There are a lot of moments on the like this on the album where it just feels like classic Gorillaz, something you would love off of like Plastic Beach or Self-Titled or Demon Days, because this album feels like a celebration of everything Gorillaz has done beforehand. It kind of has the more production values of Plastic Beach, with some of the vibes of Demon Days and the personality of Demon Days, kind of the playfulness of the self-titled album, and the ambition and features that were on Humans. So it's just like a big amalgamation of everything Gorillaz has done beforehand, and a big celebration of that, and you see that throughout the entirety of the album, and especially in this little moment here, which just feels so Gorillaz to a T, and I absolutely love it. The Lost Chord is another amazing song. It kind of starts out a bit aimless and ambient until things start to come together, and it sounds beautiful when things do start to come together. These pianos start in the background, and there's some like spoken word, and the piano chords just sound amazing, and then the song starts, and there is a thick, chunky bass line that kicks in, and it's so groovy and just sounds amazing. And then the electronics come in, and this song just sounds really good. It is a treat to the ears, and it's extremely atmospheric and spacey as well. It almost reminds me of something off of Outkast's Aquemini, how that album is so spacey and kind of heady and creates these giant environments that you feel like you want to live in. This song does something similar, but man, that bass line and the synth line together just makes some really great music. And next is this amazing 4-track run, starting with the track Pac-Man, which I absolutely adore, featuring Schoolboy Q, who comes in near the end of this song and just drops an absolute killer verse. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the transition from 2D or Damon's singing to the Schoolboy Q verse, the electronics kind of swell, and everything just gets like really loud, and there's this big crescendo, and it sounds amazing, and all of a sudden it drops, and you have Schoolboy Q going in, rapping with an amazing flow, and he just sounds great. And the first half of the song is amazing as well. The beat of the song actually samples Pac-Man, so it sounds like an arcade game. And on top of that is these, really weird, funky sounding synthesizers, that's something Gorillaz would have pulled off of Demon Days. Once again, just a very classic Gorillaz sound. And it echoes not echoes, but mirrors the, Pac-Man sample, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So it makes it sound like it's right out of a video game, and that's just really interesting because it's called Pac-Man, and 2D and Schoolboy Q kind of compare their lives to a video game. Like when you're stuck on a video game level, they feel like they're stuck where they are in life. And the song is just amazing. It's a banger. It's a bop. And it sounds great. Like I said, Schoolboy's verse sounds amazing. And of course, Damon just does an amazing job as always, as 2D. It next goes into the track Chalk Tablet Towers, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. It's featuring St. Vincent, And really, the only reason I love this song so much is because all the electronics just sound so pristine. They're so bright, and they just sound so good. They're super produced and almost sanitized in a way, but in the best way possible. That it just sounds so appealing and nice on the ears that the entire song. It's even better when St. Vincent comes in on the parts that are on top of the synthesizers here on the chorus, and it just sounds amazing. And the song has a lot of energy in it, mostly thanks to St. Vincent, really just sounding energetic on the very few parts they are on, but they do really bring it on this track. This is one of the tracks I've been repeatedly coming back to over and over again, more so than even some of the other best songs on this album, just because it's so energetic and the synthesizers are so bright sounding, and it's just like a treat to my ears that I want to keep coming back to over and over again. But then comes these next two tracks, The Pink Phantom and Aries, where this album hits kind of an emotional high point. And this is my favorite part of the album, these two songs back to back. Now, The Pink Phantom is about a summer romance and summer relationship that might not have been exactly real, or exactly what Damon thought it was going to be. And now the thoughts of this failed love and this person he wanted but lost always linger in the back of his mind, watching him like a phantom would. And it's very emotional the entire time. And it's this beautiful ballad. And it's so sad, but it just hits all the right notes for me. 2D here, where Damon is just very emotional in his performance. You can hear the sadness in his voice, especially on the break of summer lines, holding me for a long time. And it just hits in all the right spots. And this song, of course, also features Elton John and Six Lack, who are two very different people, two very different artists to be put on the same song, but it creates a very interesting dynamic between the two of them. Elton John kind of being this classic, big arena singer with just pure belting and talent, whereas Six Lack is a little more low-key and modern, and he has, you know, the R&B kind of darker vibes of something like a modern R&B artist would be, with drenched in auto-tune and stuff. And it makes a really interesting kind of conflict and dynamic between them, because they're so different, but they end up working together so well. And my favorite part of the song is at the end, where Elton and Six Lack's parts kind of interject on each other, and go back and forth, with Damon singing as well, and all three of them together just are all so emotional, and all these different sounds of their voice and different styles of the way they sing going back and forth are just beautiful, because it almost reflects how you can feel in these moments and the different ways you will feel when you're sad and when you go through these things. And it's just a very beautiful song that reflects on this ended summer romance. Like I said, that might not be exactly what Damon thought it would be. It's an absolute beautiful song. And you don't want to forget Elton John's beautiful piano playing throughout the entirety of this track. Very good stuff. One of my favorite tracks on the album. Even though I didn't actually love it immediately when it was first released as a single, but listening to it and the concept of the album and really paying attention to it and letting everything, you know, kind of get to me, letting the emotions and lyrics kind of resonate with me, this song is amazing, and one of probably the emotional high points of Gorillaz' career, one of the most emotional tracks they've ever made, followed up by a song that I think is maybe even more emotional, and that is Aries. And I have to say, Aries is my favorite track on this album. This was the, I believe, third track released off of Song Machine, and I fell in love with it almost immediately because it's so beautiful and so emotional, partly due to its feature here, Peter Hook, who was the bassist of Joy Division and New Order. And you all know I love New Order. And if you don't know Peter Hook, he is one of the greatest bassists of all time. He plays his bass as a lead instrument, and it helps create this really kind of sad, melancholy vibe. And that's seen on a lot of New Order's work. You can hear it on songs like Age of Consent and Leave Me Alone and Mr. Disco. All of New Order has this really kind of reflective, sad, melancholy vibe to it, and that is brought here on Aries as well, because he's here playing the bass. So these sad, melancholy vibes that you would hear on a New Order song are here on this Gorillaz song. And stylistically and sonically, it also sounds a lot like a New Order song. It takes a very heavy new wave inspiration with the kind of synthesizers and the sequence drum machines that sound like something out of a dance or new wave or post-punk song from the 80s. But it also doesn't just sound like a New Order ripoff, because Damon Albarn is so talented once again. And also, Damon Albarn is no stranger to making these sad, melancholy, kind of reflective songs. We've seen it many times in the past on multiple Gorillaz albums. Tomorrow Comes Today, El Manana, Broken, Empire Ants, Busted in Blue. Hell, most of the Now Now kind of has these vibes to it. So, Damon here gives one of those classic kind of melancholy, sad performances that Gorillaz are also known for. He sounds like he does in Tomorrow Comes Today, this kind of sad, reflective, melancholy singing, and you can hear kind of the sadness and emotion in his voice. And it just pairs so well with what Peter Hook is doing, that it just creates such an emotional high point of this album. Not only of this album, but this band's career. This has to be probably one of the best Gorillaz songs of all time, especially emotional-wise. And it kind of fits with what I like about Gorillaz. If you know me, you know my favorite Gorillaz song is Broken, and, well, my top 3 is Tomorrow Comes Today, Empire Ants, and Broken, which are 3 very kind of melancholy, reflective, sad songs, especially Broken and Tomorrow Comes Today. And this fits right up there with that, so this is exactly what I look for when it comes to Gorillaz. Not to mention the lyrics on this thing are amazing. This song talks about someone that Damon kind of loves but misses, and someone who doesn't reciprocate those feelings, but the fact that he feels so lost without them, and even though he tries to get over them over and over again, something always happens that he just can't. And it leads to some beautiful, amazing, touching lyrics. I'm looking out at a volcano, trying to read the world today and see where you're at. I never do that. I'm a model that is uncomplicated. You can play a happy tune on me, but don't turn me off, 'cause then I am silent. I'm standing on the beach in the distance, and even though you're far away, you can see my red light. It's waiting to turn green, 'cause I feel so isolated without you. I can't play a happy tune on my own, so stay by my side. Beautiful lyrics here. And of course, a lot of this is subdued coming from Damon. He's very quiet when he sings, very laid back. But then on the hook here, the emotions kind of boil over, and you hear Damon singing a lot more loudly, high tide, high tide, high tide, over and over again, because much like the waves of a high tide crashing over you, the emotions that he feels for this person, and because of this person, come crashing over him all over again, much like the wave, like I said. And it just kind of boils over, and Damon sings, and it feels like I'm falling in again, so sadly and so really hopelessly. And it's really a song about just being hopelessly lost in your own emotions and sadness. But it's so beautiful. The melancholy and reflectiveness and heartbroken vibes of this song are just immaculate and amazing, and it's everything I love about Gorillaz, with Peter Hook's amazing bass thrown on top. 2 of my favorite kind of sad boy melancholy bands, Gorillaz, in moments at least, and then New Order kind of coming together, making this masterpiece of a song. Of course, the next track is going to seem a little disappointing in comparison to both the Pink Phantom and Aries, but Friday the 13th featuring Octavian is a very good song. I think this one is really interesting, as it takes the kind of reggae sound, but completely overhauls it using electronics and synthesizers, in that, kind of classic Gorillaz electronica sound. So it just becomes a whole new kind of reggae, and it's very interesting and unlike anything I've really ever heard before. I mean, of course, other electronic acts like 21 Pilots have incorporated elements of reggae into their music, but this song is more, like I said, a complete overhaul and makeover of reggae using electronics and more synthetic sounds, but I think it turns out really well and really interesting. I also really like Octavian's performance on here. Very unique voice, being, French, living in London, so many different cultural influences here with Octavian's voice as well. So it just creates, like I said, a very unique song. There's not much Damon on this song, but that's okay because I think the uniqueness and kind of cool stylings of this song really speak for itself. The track is then followed up by another track, well, no shit, called Dead Butterflies. And once again, this song is interesting because Gorillaz takes a swing at the trap sound. Now, that sounds like it would be garbage, but it actually works really well here, and I think it's a really great take on the trap sound because Gorillaz being Gorillaz and Damon Albarn being the artist that he is, it's a cut above so much other trap. It's got such a mature take on it, and it's so much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Refined. It's so much more refined and mature than so much other trap music is. It just works so much better than a lot of the trap stylings do. I would say this is probably the best trap song ever made, because I'm that kind of person who's not really a fan of how low effort a lot of that genre is. But like I said, here it feels very artistic, it feels very intentional, it's very mature, it's very refined, and it's produced very well. I also like how it starts off kind of messy and stripped back with Damon just kind of at the piano, plucking out chords, telling it, oh, loop that piano chord over again, and then it just kind of comes together into the beat, and the 808s and stuff start going, and I think the song is pretty cool. Then it's followed by Desolate, which I think is probably the weakest moment on this album. It was the second single released. That being said, I do still think it's a really good song. It doesn't do much too interesting compared to some of the other tracks on this album. It reminds me a lot of El Mañana from Demon Days. That's not a bad thing, though, because the kind of thick bass line that goes throughout this entire song, the bum ba da da dum bum 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 bum, and the kind of pretty unfiltered guitars like El Mañana, very similar to that song, but I think it works really well. I like the kind of electronics here on the hook. The chants of Desolate sound really good, and I think the featured artist, I'm not even going to try and pronounce her name, but she comes here singing in French. Sounds good. Very interesting. Kind of makes it a little more unique than it would be otherwise without the French. But overall, I think the song is still really solid and still is a treat to listen to on the ears. The production is great. Throughout the entirety of this album, the production is great. All these songs just sound so good. There's never a moment where I think the mixing is bad. There's never a moment when I think something sounds bad. Like the synth tones and stuff always sound amazing. The bass is always good and mixed just loud enough. Damon sounds great, even when there are like vocal effects. There's auto-tune used on a couple of songs, like Dead Butterflies and Valley of the Pagans, both have auto-tune, but it never sounds bad, it sounds good, it's used artistically. Everything about this album just turns out great, and it's capped off with the amazing song Momentary Bliss, which was the first song released, featuring Slaves and Slow Tie. This song is amazing. Once again, it's one of the best off of the album. It just kicks all sorts of ass. It starts off with these kind of like woozy, laid-back guitars that feel kind of drugged out. And then, comes Damon, once again, just kind of laid back, very fitting the vibe of the guitars. We can do so much better than this. And then the beat drops. And Slow Tie comes in and starts rapping, and the anger is here. You can hear Slow Tie seething as he raps. I love how angry this song is. This is, like, one of my angry songs. If you're pissed off at somebody, you just throw this song on and scream along to Slow Tie's lyrics. potential, you lack credentials, and you are special, so fucking special. So much anger within this verse here, and it kind of continues into the rest of the song, especially when slaves really kick in, and it kind of sounds like something off the Clash, some like ska punk kind of vibes here, with slaves guitar, and you've got Damon and Slow Tie chanting, "It makes me sick to think that you aren't happy in your skin. It's wearing thin to think the light bulb don't blink, just flickers so dim, then it pops and withers. You're a turkey twizzler, you deserve school dinners. It makes me sick to think you ain't happy in your skin," yada yada yada. That part is great, where they're just angrily kind of chanting over this kind of ska punk sound. Really just peak Gorillaz being wild as always. And I really like the outro part as well. We could do so much better than this. Mausoleum Faces and Momentary Bliss. Really just some great stuff here. So yeah, that is every song on Song Machine, at least the bass version of the album. There are like 6 more bonus tracks that honestly don't do much for me at the moment. I think they're okay. I'm not going to talk about them now, but tell you what, if this video gets 10 likes, I will review the bonus tracks in a separate video. But to be completely candid about how I feel for a minute, this album is amazing. Songs like The Pink Elephant and The Pink Elephant, The Pink Phantom and Aries are some of the emotional peaks that Gorillaz has ever reached, that resonate with me a lot. Songs like Momentary Bliss are great moments of anger, and this album, like I said at the beginning of the video, is so diverse because of all the different guest features, and it leans toward those sounds. You've got, you know, the kind of ska punk sound of Momentary Bliss, but you've also got the post-punk new wave of Aries, and the kind of electro balladry of the Pink Phantom, and then an electric kind of overhaul of reggae on Friday the 13th. So many different sounds kind of going on here. You know, your classic kind of electronica on Pac-Man that you would hear off of something like Demon Days. So many different sounds here, but they all work so well, and the album still feels incredibly cohesive despite having all these different guest artists. And unlike Humans, which is still an album I really do love, it never feels like it's not a Gorillaz album, because Damon always has his part here. He's never overtaken by the guests per se. He's always, with the exception of maybe on Friday the 13th, he's always kind of helping to lead the song, and you can always hear and feel his influence. So I think this is the best thing Gorillaz has put out since Plastic Beach, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. And I'm probably going to safely assume this is going to be my album of the year. Strokes were amazing, the new album Normal is still an amazing album, but I think this one edges it out. And I jumped the gun giving that Microphones album the score I did earlier this year. It has shrunk on me a lot, I haven't come back to it. But I don't think I'm jumping the gun when I say that Song Machine is a 10 out of 10. It's that good. I love every track on this thing, I really do. So yeah. You know, like, subscribe, let me know what you think of Song Machine, what songs did you like, what songs don't you like, should I cover the bonus tracks, did you like the bonus tracks, they didn't do much for me, unlike the bonus tracks on Humans, actually. The Apprentice remains to be one of my favorite Gorillaz songs to this day. That being said, let me know what you think, and I will see you all next time.